In a world filled with noise, speed, and pressure, most of us are not suffering from lack of time, money, or love. We're suffering because we've forgotten how to live, forgotten how to think, forgotten what truly matters. Today, we'll rediscover the lost lessons of Stoicism, simple, timeless truths that, when ignored, create 90% of the pain in modern life. Let's begin this inward journey together. There was a morning last fall I'll never forget. I had just sat down with my coffee early, around 6:30. The house was quiet, the sun barely rising. I was looking forward to a peaceful day. But within an hour, everything unraveled. First, a phone call from my brother. Our mom had fallen again. Nothing serious, thank God, but it shook me. Then, an email from work. Something I had spent weeks preparing had been cancelled. No explanation. No thank you. Just gone. And just when I thought I could shake it off, the hot water stopped working. Cold shower. Cold mood. By 9 a.m., I was angry. Frustrated. On edge. Snapping at people I love. And for what? None of it was in my control. I didn't cause the fall. I didn't cancel the project. I didn't break the water heater. But still, I let all of it ruin me mentally, emotionally for the rest of the day. That's when I remembered something I once read from Marcus Aurelius: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That line hit different that morning. You see, I'm in my 50s now. And one thing life keeps teaching me is that chaos never really stops. It just changes shape. When we're younger, we think life will calm down someday. That the world will start behaving. But it doesn't. People disappoint you. Plans fall apart. The car breaks down right before vacation. The world keeps spinning, and not always in your favor. But what can change, what must change, is how we respond. That morning, I made a choice. I turned off my phone. I sat on the back porch with another cup of coffee. I took a deep breath, and I said to myself, this world doesn't owe me a perfect day. But I owe myself a peaceful mind. I stopped fighting what I couldn't fix. And just like that, the storm calmed, not outside me, but inside. That's what this lesson is about. Not controlling the people or events around you, but taking full ownership of how you think, how you feel, how you choose to show up in the face of it all. It's simple, but it's not always easy. Especially after 40. When you've lived enough years to know that life doesn't play fair. When you're carrying invisible weights, aging parents, grown children who don't call, a body that's not as strong as it used to be. It's hard. I know. But this is also when the lesson matters most. Because when you realize that peace is not out there but in here, you stop wasting energy on blame. You stop letting small things steal your big joy. And you start living, from the inside out. This ties into the next lesson, something Seneca said, and I think you'll feel it too: he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. But before we get there, I want to leave you with this: you can't calm the storm, but you can calm yourself. And when you do, you become the anchor, not just for you, but for those around you. Let's keep going. Don't suffer twice. A few years ago, I was waiting for some medical test results. My doctor had found something unusual in a routine scan. She said it might be nothing, or it might be something. You know the kind of call. For the next 7 days, I didn't sleep right. Couldn't focus at work. My mind kept wandering to the worst possible scenarios. Cancer. Surgeries. Goodbyes. I imagined how I'd tell my wife. How my kids would take it. I even started writing a letter, just in case. And then, the results came in. Benign. Completely harmless. No follow-up needed. You'd think I would have felt relief, and I did, for a moment. But mostly, I felt exhausted. I had just lived through a week of pain that never actually existed. And that's when it hit me, I didn't just wait for the news. I suffered through it. Twice. First in my imagination. Then in reality, which thankfully turned out fine. Later, I stumbled across something Seneca once wrote: "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." And I felt like he was talking directly to me. You see, as we get older, especially after 40, we tend to carry more worry. It's not because we're weak. It's because we've seen things. We've watched people we love fall ill. We've lost jobs we thought were secure. We've had the ground pulled from under us more than once. So our minds try to prepare us, by making us suffer in advance. But here's the truth no one tells you: worry doesn't protect you. It just drains you. It tricks you into believing you're doing something useful, when in fact, you're just running in circles inside your head. It's like walking through a storm that hasn't even arrived and might never come. And here's something else I've learned: most of the things I've spent days worrying about, they never happened. Or if they did, they were never as bad as I imagined. Think about that. How many moments of joy have we missed because we were too busy rehearsing pain that wasn't even real? There's a difference between preparation and fear. One builds strength. The other steals peace. And the Stoics knew this well. They didn't tell us to ignore danger or deny reality. They simply reminded us to stay grounded in the present. To suffer only when suffering is real. Not before. Not twice. So now, when my mind starts spinning stories about tomorrow, I stop. I breathe. And I say, is this happening now? Or am I just borrowing pain from the future? That one question has saved me from countless sleepless nights. And it leads us perfectly into the next lesson: wanting less is wealth. Because sometimes, it's not the fear itself that hurts us, it's the endless craving for certainty, control, and comfort, in a world that was never meant to give us those things. But for now, I'll leave you with this: don't suffer twice. Once is already enough. Wanting less is wealth. I remember sitting in my driveway one evening, just watching the lights from my neighbor's new truck. Brand new. Shiny. Loud in all the right ways. He waved at me. Proud smile on his face. And I smiled back. But I'll be honest, a part of me felt something else. That little whisper: maybe it's time I upgraded my car too. Maybe I deserve something nice. Maybe I'm falling behind. And just like that, peace slipped away. Isn't it strange how quickly that happens? One moment, you're fine. The next, you're measuring your life against someone else's, wondering if you have enough, if you are enough. But that night, I walked into my garage and looked at my old sedan. It still runs. Still gets me where I need to go. Still holds the memories of road trips and late night drives with my daughter singing in the back seat. And I thought, why did I forget all that, just because his truck was newer? That's when Seneca's words came back to me: it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. I used to think wealth meant having a lot. But now I believe this: real wealth is when you no longer feel the need to chase more. Not because you gave up, but because you finally realized, you already have enough. After 40, this lesson hits harder. Because we've seen how the pursuit of more can eat people alive. We've watched marriages fall apart over money. We've seen friends chase promotions that cost them their health. We've felt the pressure to keep up with neighbors, co-workers, even strangers on a screen. But here's what the Stoics teach us: freedom begins when you stop letting your cravings decide your worth. Want less. Not because you have to, but because it frees your soul. Think of the peace you'd feel if you didn't need the next gadget, the next raise, the next compliment to feel okay. Think of the energy you'd save by not chasing things that leave you just as empty once you have them. Wanting less doesn't mean settling. It means choosing joy over comparison, simplicity over stress, gratitude over grasping. And funny thing is, the moment you let go of wanting more, life suddenly feels richer. Not because it changed, but because you did. This ties right into the next lesson, one that helped me slow down and find peace in the middle of chaos. Stillness reveals truth. But before we move on, I want to leave you with this thought: you don't need to have more. You need to want less. That's where peace lives. That's where wealth begins. Stillness reveals truth. There's something I do now that I never really made time for in my younger years. Every Sunday morning, I sit on my back porch with a cup of black coffee. No phone. No news. Just me, the quiet air, and the sound of birds waking up with the sun. It only lasts 10, maybe 15 minutes. But in those few quiet minutes, I feel more grounded than I do all week. Funny, isn't it? How it takes so little to feel at peace. Yet most of us run all week chasing things we think will give us that same feeling. I used to believe that staying busy meant staying productive. That a full calendar meant a full life. But now, in my 50s, I see it differently. Busyness doesn't always mean progress. Noise doesn't always mean meaning. Sometimes, when life feels the most overwhelming, what we really need is stillness. Not escape. Not distraction. Just stillness. I remember one afternoon a few years ago. I had just gotten into a heated argument with someone I care about deeply. Voices were raised. Words were said, words I didn't mean. After they left, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. My heart was still racing. My thoughts loud and tangled. But instead of picking up my phone or turning on the TV like I used to, I just sat. I let the silence settle in. I let my breathing slow. And somewhere in that stillness, the noise in my head began to fade. And then came the truth: I wasn't angry. I was hurt. And more than anything, I just wanted to be understood. That moment of stillness didn't fix the situation, but it gave me clarity. And from that clarity came compassion. That's the gift stillness offers us: the space to see things as they are, not as our emotions distort them. There's a quote I love: calmness is clarity. A still mind sees without distortion. In this noisy world, especially after 40, it becomes even more important to create these little pockets of quiet. Because life doesn't slow down for us, we have to slow ourselves down. We carry so much in our minds: worries about our health, our parents, our children, our future. And if we never pause, if we never sit still long enough to hear our own thoughts clearly, we start reacting to life, instead of living it. The truth rarely shouts. It waits patiently. And it reveals itself when we're finally still enough to listen. This connects deeply to what we just talked about: wanting less. Because when we sit in stillness, we often realize, we don't need more. We just need to be present with what already is. And now, as we continue this journey inward, it leads us to something even more powerful: mastering our emotions. Because stillness may bring clarity, but how we respond to that clarity is what defines our peace. But for now, let me leave you with this: in the stillness, you don't lose yourself. You finally meet yourself. Master your anger or it will master you. I once lost a friend over something that, looking back, wasn't even that serious. We were both tired. Both stressed. He said something that hit a nerve, and I fired back before thinking. One sharp sentence, that's all it took. And the silence between us lasted for years. We eventually made peace, but not before the damage had been done. And the saddest part? It wasn't what he said that caused it. It was my anger. I let it speak for me. And once words leave your mouth, you can't take them back. There's a quote from Epictetus that I wish I had truly understood back then: Anyone who can make you angry becomes your master. Those words are simple, but they carry a heavy truth. Because when you allow someone or something to control your emotional state, you give away your power. You hand over your peace. Now, I'm not saying anger is always bad. It's a natural emotion. It tells us when something feels wrong, when a boundary's been crossed. But the danger comes when we let anger make decisions for us. When we let it drive the car instead of sitting quietly in the passenger seat. After 40, life gives you more chances to get angry. You've seen enough unfairness. You've been cut off in traffic too many times. You've dealt with co-workers who don't pull their weight, family members who don't listen, and strangers who show zero kindness. And sometimes, that fire builds up inside you like pressure in a pipe. But here's the thing, uncontrolled anger doesn't solve problems. It creates new ones. It hurts the people you love. It turns small disagreements into deep wounds. And worst of all, it stays with you long after the moment has passed. I've learned that real strength isn't raising your voice. It's knowing when to pause. It's breathing before speaking. It's walking away when silence says more than words ever could. Anger may feel powerful in the moment, but it weakens you when it lingers. It steals your sleep. It poisons your thoughts. It rewrites your memories, turning even good people into villains. But you have a choice. You can choose your response. And that's where true mastery begins. This lesson connects to the stillness we talked about earlier. Because in that stillness, you gain clarity. And with clarity comes control, not over others, but over yourself. That's Stoicism at its heart, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to hold emotion in your hands without letting it spill everywhere. And as we move forward, this naturally brings us to something even more valuable than control time. Because when you let anger steal your moments, you're not just losing your temper. You're losing precious time you'll never get back. So let me leave you with this: master your anger, or it will quietly master you. And when it does, you'll wake up one day wondering where your peace and your time went. Time is the most precious currency. I was cleaning out an old drawer the other day and found a birthday card from my daughter. She must have been 8 or 9 when she wrote it. Her handwriting was big and uneven, and in pink crayon she wrote, "I love when you play with me, Daddy. Even if it's just for 10 minutes. I stared at that card for a long time. Because now she's in college. And 10 minutes with her is rare. That moment hit me hard. Not because I regret being a father, but because I finally understood something I had missed for years: time isn't just passing. It's spending. And once it's spent, you don't get it back. You see, back then, I told myself I was too busy. There was always one more email to send. One more project to finish. Always later. Always tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and the people we love grow up, grow distant, or sometimes, just go. Seneca once wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy." And I think he was right. We lock our doors. We protect our money. But we hand our time away to distractions, stress, and meaningless noise. Especially after 40, we start to feel it. The calendar pages seem to flip faster. Holidays come and go in the blink of an eye. You catch yourself saying things like, "Wasn't that just last year?" No, it was 5. But here's the good news: it's not too late. You can still treat time like the sacred currency it is. Not with fear, but with respect. Because every moment you spend with intention, whether it's watching the sun rise, calling your mom, or laughing with a friend, those moments count. And they add up to a life well lived. Think of your time like a bank account. Every hour you give to worry, anger, or chasing things that don't matter, that's a withdrawal you never get back. But every hour you spend present, grateful, connected that's a deposit into something that lasts longer than any paycheck. This connects to the last lesson about anger. Because when you let anger steal your hours, you're not just hurting others, you're spending time you could have used to love, grow, or simply breathe. And it also leads naturally to what's next: how hardship reveals who you really are. Because when time feels short, and life tests you, that's when your character speaks loudest. But before we go there, let me leave you with this: your time is not a burden. It's a gift. And the way you spend it tells the story of your life. Spend it well. Suffering reveals who you are. There's a moment I think about often. It was about 10 years ago. I had just lost my job. Out of the blue. No warning. No chance to prepare. I remember walking to my car that afternoon, holding a cardboard box with my things in it: family photos, a coffee mug, a little plaque that said "Stay calm." The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat there, in the driver's seat, staring out the windshield, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Not just because of the money, though that mattered, but because I felt useless. Like I didn't matter anymore. That's the thing about suffering. It strips away the roles, the routines, the sense of control. And what's left is you. Just you. And in that quiet, painful space, you start to see yourself clearly. Epictetus once said, "Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself." I didn't fully understand that quote until I had nothing left to lean on but my own mindset. And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty at first. I was angry. Bitter. I wanted someone to blame. But over time, slowly I started to see something else beneath the frustration. A small, steady voice that said, "You've been through worse. You're still breathing. You're still you." That voice got louder each day. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped resisting what I couldn't control and started focusing on what I could: my thoughts, my choices, my perspective. You see, suffering is a mirror. It doesn't always show you what you want to see, but it shows you what's true. And if you let it, it can become the start of something deeper. Not just survival but transformation. By the time I landed on my feet again, I wasn't the same person. I was more grounded, more grateful, and strangely, more peaceful. Because I had met myself in the fire and learned that I could walk through it. If you're over 40, you probably know what I mean. You've had your share of storms, maybe some you didn't think you'd survive. But here you are. And that means something. That means you're stronger than you think. Wiser than you were. And more prepared for what comes next. This lesson flows directly from what we just talked about: how time is precious. Because when life gets hard, it forces you to look closely at how you're spending that time, and who you're becoming in the process. And that leads us into the next truth: live like today is your only life. But before we go there, let me leave you with this: you don't truly know yourself when things are easy. You meet the real you, in the struggle. And if you're paying attention, that version of you might just surprise you. Live like today is your only life. A few years ago, I went to the funeral of an old high school friend. We hadn't seen each other in years, but when I stood by his photo, I was hit by this strange, heavy thought: he didn't know that morning would be his last. He had plans for the weekend. He had groceries in the fridge. His life wasn't finished. It just stopped. On the drive home, I kept thinking about something Seneca once said: begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life. I used to brush that off. It sounded poetic, but not practical. We all have bills to pay. Responsibilities. Who has time to treat every day like a once-in-a-lifetime event? But after that funeral, I started asking myself a quiet question each morning: if today were all I had, how would I live it? And that question changed things. Not in some grand, dramatic way, but in small, simple choices. I called my son, even though we hadn't talked in a few weeks. I took a walk with my wife and really listened, instead of half hearing her while checking my phone. I let the sun hit my face without rushing through it. I made eye contact with a stranger and smiled first. And you know what? Those moments didn't add to my day. They became my day. You see, when we were younger, we thought life was a long road. And maybe for some it is. But after 40, we begin to feel the truth in our bones, time isn't guaranteed. So we start to carry this quiet urgency, not fear, but awareness. That now matters. That someday isn't promised. That waiting to feel ready often means never starting at all. Living like today is your only life doesn't mean quitting your job or climbing a mountain. It means showing up fully for the moments you often overlook. That phone call. That shared laugh. That quiet hour when nothing big happens except everything that really matters. This ties deeply to our last lesson: suffering reveals who you are. Because when hardship strips things away, what's left is what's real. And real life is found in the ordinary moments we usually rush past. Which brings us to a truth that grounds all Stoic thinking: you don't control how long you live. But you do control how fully you live. And that leads naturally into our next lesson: let go of what you can't keep. Because when you stop clinging so tightly, you free your hands, and your heart, to hold what matters. But before we go there, I'll leave you with this: if today was all you had, would it be enough? Not in what you did but in how you were. Present. Grateful. Awake. That's what it means to truly live. Let go of what you can't keep. I once held on to a job too long. Not because I loved it, but because it felt safe, familiar, comfortable. Even when I knew it was draining me. Even when I felt that quiet voice inside saying, "You've outgrown this." I stayed. Because letting go felt like losing. Like failure. But the truth? It wasn't failure. It was fear. It took a health scare, mild, but loud enough to shake me, for me to finally walk away. And as scary as that decision was, I'll tell you something I learned on the other side: sometimes, holding on hurts more than letting go. You see, we're taught from an early age to fight for things. To hold tight to what we've earned. To never give up. But no one teaches us how to release with grace. To let go of what no longer fits. What no longer brings peace. Whether it's a job, a relationship, an image of who we thought we'd be by now. And that's where the Stoics offer such quiet wisdom. Until we have begun to go without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. Seneca. That line stopped me when I first read it. Because I saw myself in it. I thought I needed success to feel worthy. I thought I needed certain people to feel loved. I thought I needed recognition to feel seen. But over time, as life stripped some of those things away, I didn't fall apart. I actually felt lighter. Letting go didn't leave me empty. It made space for something truer. And I believe that speaks to something we all wrestle with after 40. By now, you've built a life. You've worked hard, sacrificed, endured. And yet, you may find yourself carrying things that no longer serve you. Old resentments. Outdated dreams. Fear of disappointing others. But here's the truth: peace doesn't come from holding tighter. It comes from holding lighter. Like a leaf resting in your palm, not clenched in your fist. This flows naturally from what we just talked about: living as if today is all you have. Because when you see how short and sacred life is, you stop clinging to what weighs you down. And that brings us to our final lesson in this part of the journey: don't just talk Stoicism. Live it. Because wisdom means nothing unless it's embodied. But for now, I'll leave you with this: letting go is not the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning. The beginning of who you really are, when you're no longer held down by what you were never meant to carry. Don't just talk Stoicism. Live it. A few years ago, I had a friend who was always quoting Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius this, Seneca that. He had the quotes memorized, the book stacked neatly on his desk. He sounded wise, like someone who had it all figured out. But here's the thing. The moment life got tough, when he lost a client, or got bad news, or someone cut him off in traffic, he'd explode. Snap at people. Get bitter. Blame the world. He talked Stoicism, but didn't live it. And I remember watching him one day, thinking to myself, maybe the real test of wisdom isn't in what we say when life is easy. It's in how we behave when life is not. One of my favorite lines from Epictetus is this: don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That hit me hard the first time I read it, because I realized I'd done the same thing at times. I knew the right words. I could talk about patience, resilience, self-control. But was I living it, at the dinner table? With my kids? Alone with my thoughts at 2 a.m.? Not always. And the truth is, most people over 40 don't need more quotes. We've heard them. We've read the books, seen the videos, listened to the podcasts. What we need now, is to live it. In real life. In quiet ways. Not for applause. Not for a perfect Instagram post. But for ourselves. To be calm when things fall apart. To pause before reacting. To choose peace over pride. To sit in discomfort without needing to fix it or run from it. That's Stoicism, not in theory, but in practice. It's when you choose to forgive, even though your ego wants revenge. It's when you admit you were wrong, even though no one's demanding it. It's when you stay steady, not because life is perfect, but because you've stopped needing it to be. This ties back perfectly to what we just talked about, letting go. Because when you let go of needing to look wise, you make room to be wise. And that's the lesson I carry with me every day now. I don't want to just know the right words. I want to live in a way that makes them real. I want my children to see calm, not just hear about it. I want my partner to feel respect, not just be told about it. I want my actions to speak not louder but truer than my words. So I ask you now, gently, what would your life look like if you stopped talking about the person you want to be and simply became them? So here we are. 10 lessons. 10 quiet truths that were never really hidden, just forgotten. Buried beneath noise, urgency, and all the things we thought we needed to chase. But maybe now, you're starting to remember that you don't need to control everything, just your own mind. That worry is not protection, it's punishment. That peace doesn't come from having more but from wanting less. That stillness brings clarity, and suffering brings out your true self. That time isn't just passing, it's precious. That today, this day, is your life. That letting go isn't loss, it's freedom. And that wisdom isn't in how well you speak. It's in how quietly you live it. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just start by changing the way you meet this day. Because the path to a better life isn't out there. It begins within. If this video spoke to something in your heart, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Not for numbers. Not for noise. But so we can keep meeting here. Week by week. Lesson by lesson. To return together to what really matters. And if there's a part of today's video that stayed with you, leave a comment below. It might be the very line someone else needs to hear today. Because wisdom, like peace, multiplies when it's shared. So, until next time, be gentle with your thoughts. Be steady with your time. And above all, be the person you were always meant to be.